This is a guest essay written by Joanne Fedler, an author of 15 books.
Optimists like me are often made fun of by cynics, by which I mean my husband. I don't know if it is my natural disposition to always look on the bright side or whether it is a cultivated personality trait. The difference is I want people to like me, and my husband doesn't care what people think of him. A friend's son once remarked that my husband is the coolest person he knows, which is weird because his toenails are smashed from ultramarathon running, and you never want to see him in a pair of Birkenstocks, especially if you're just about to eat. Still, despite my wholesome toes, I have never attracted such an accolade. I am too keen, even I know this. Enthusiasm is gauche and graceless, perhaps even juvenile, in a culture that rewards sarcasm and mockery. I grew up on naughty books, not The Simpsons. I have never wanted to live inside a mind that easily expels put-downs, because people are schmucks and a waste of time. It leads me to wonder whether being a skeptic isn't its own cultivated and curated identity, which seeds in the lonely darkness of teenage years. I have my theory that witty repartee is a defense sourced in some backstory wound that may or may not have involved breastfeeding. And I don't live shielded, mostly because I don't know how to, not because I was bottle-fed. My optimism makes me an easy teasing target because it is, let's face it, a little naive and foolish after a certain point. Precisely where that point is the point of this essay. A friend commented recently that my bullshot radar is faulty after I trusted someone who has given me sufficient reason not to. She pointed out a pattern which was hopeless to deny and made me feel a little embarrassed. Eventually, we have to take responsibility for finding ourselves in the same place again and determine where the murky border between la-la land and hardcore reality is. William Blake wrote poems of innocence and experience to distinguish the two states, and all you have to do is read The Lamb and the Tiger to get the contrasting vibes. Rejoice, tender, and bless describe the frolicking lamb, but in the forests of the night we get fearful, burnt, fire, and chain, the language of maturity. By the time we're menstruating or shaving, the tooth fairy or Easter bunny should be fully retired, debunked as fictions. But the agony of giving up these fantasies is real. There are, I guess, complicated emotional reasons for why I've always been a magical thinker. But what use are our sort when the synagogues are burning? Susan Sontag wrote in her essay, regarding the pain of others, that, quote, someone who is perennially surprised that depravity exists, who continues to feel disillusioned, even incredulous, when confronted with evidence of what humans are capable of inflicting in the way of gruesome, hands-on cruelties upon other humans, has not reached moral or psychological adulthood. No one, after a certain age, has the right to this kind of innocence, of superficiality, to this degree of ignorance or amnesia. End quote. I think if offered the choice, I would opt to hold tight to my innocence and incredulity. But there comes a junction on the path where optimism and positivity turn toxic. They are a soporific, a bypass of evil. And you will be taken as seriously as a wand-waving child in a tutu when what's needed are serious hostage negotiators. People love to quote Anne Frank, who wrote in her diary, quote, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death, end quote. Anne was only 16 and hadn't lived enough to make a decent assessment of what Nazis were capable of. If she had known that she was going to die soon, betrayed by neighbors, she might have revised her adorable assessment of people. Because, despite what we magical thinkers like to believe, some people love dead Jews, which is the title of Dara Horn's very excellent book. Another one of my go-to humanists is Eddie Hillesum, a young Dutch writer who was taken to Westerbork labor camp in 1943. She kept detailed diaries in which she wrote, quote, we have so much work to do on ourselves that we shouldn't even be thinking of hating our so-called enemies. We are hurtful enough to one another as it is. And I don't really know what I mean when I say that there are bullies and bad characters among our own people, for no one is really bad deep down. End quote. If Eddie is right, I'm not sure she is. The question is, how far down does your badness have to go before you can be persuaded to herd people into gas chambers, shoot them down at a music festival, rape women, and kidnap babies? What point is there in thinking the best of people who clearly don't think the best or even enough of you to let you live? Amongst Jews, there's a saying, quote, "The pessimists fled, and the optimists stayed behind." Eddie knew she might die, but she wasn't as attached to her own survival as perhaps I am, and it makes me grievously mad that she was killed in Auschwitz at the age of 29. Her belief that people weren't bad deep down did not save her. Neither did her faith in God, goodness, finding inner peace, and spending time in prayer. Still, she died an optimist, like Anne Frank did. So did Vivian Silver, a lifelong peace activist who fought for reconciliation between Palestinians and Israelis. She advocated for human rights and a negotiated peace agreement and worked with Women Wage Peace, an interfaith grassroots organization of Jewish and Arab women. Vivian was murdered by Hamas at Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7, 2023. Perhaps she didn't believe Hamas would do what they have been promising to do always, which is to kill as many Jews as possible. That's magical thinking for you. Eddie Hillesum wrote, quote, "I also believe, childishly perhaps, but stubbornly, that the earth will become more habitable again, only through love." End quote. The little girl in me arches towards the light of her words. But the adult knows that the world we live in is not a Beatles song. We need more than just love. Not all people are good, even deep down, quote unquote. In the forests of the night, where there are deadly terrors, I have to learn the ways of the tiger. I don't know if it will ever make me cool, but maybe, just maybe, it will keep me alive.